please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hi there, good afternoon. This is Your Stocks. I'm Mangla Malu. With me is Sumera Abdi. Good day for the market so far. 55 points higher on the Nifty. The mid-cap index, that one's really outperforming with a gain of 250 points and the advanced decline ratio to a fair 3.5 stocks in the green for 1 in the red. We're virtually at the high point of the day for the mid-cap index. But for the Nifty, the one thing that I'm tracking is the 10,200 call. Remember, tomorrow is the expiry. The 10,200 call should come up for you. That one's seeing a bit of writing. 27 lakh shares added out there for a premium of 30 rupees a piece means that maybe we can face some hurdles above that 10,200. If not, then maybe some more short covering.
Yeah, and don't forget that tomorrow is also the last trading day of the week.
Yes, it is. It's as good as a Thursday today.
Let's get started. Our two experts, Sharmila Joshi and Rajat Bose, will be answering all the queries that are being sent in by our viewers. So good afternoon to both of you. Our first query comes in from Raj Dubey, who's written to us from Madhya Pradesh. He says he holds 300 shares of Indraprastha Gas at 327 rupees. He's been holding for a month. He's a short-term investor and wants to know what he should do. So he's making quite a bit of a loss over here. Rajat, what's your quick take for a short-term investor? Can he hold on any levels that you see higher?
Higher levels are pretty much unlikely. I mean, I would say that I'm expecting quite a bit of supply pressure if it were to move up to say something like 300 to about 315. So I would suggest that since he is already losing money, maximum stop loss that he can see is 270. But if I were in his shoes, what I would have done is that getting out when this rally tapers off. I mean, this market rally tapers off.
All right, get out when this market rally tapers off. That's the commentary coming in on Indraprastha Gas with from Rajat on a short term. But we have a caller calling us from Bangalore with a query. Has investments in Prakash Industries. Sangram?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I'm holding Prakash Industries at 185. Sorry, yeah, price is 185 as average,
right.
And quantity is almost 85. And is it the right time to add more, or I can wait? I can hold for 3-4 years also.
All right, wait for 3-4 years. Okay, do you have more money that you can allocate to Prakash Industries right now?
Not right now, maybe after 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Okay, so Sharmila, he wants to know whether he can add more or not. It's pretty close to his buy price. 178 is where the stock is. In the next 2-3 weeks, can add some more. Would you recommend or?
Well, you know, I'm overall positive on metals as a space, and I think within that Prakash Industries at this price would be a hold for me. But I think in terms of adding more, then my preference would be towards a Hindalco or JSPL at this price. So, you know, when it comes to adding more, I would recommend another stock. But I think definitely he can hold on to the quantity he has, because as I said, I'm positive on the sector. And I think that now, you know, that you're hearing of all these changes with US taking a slightly more mellow stand, you could perhaps see a bit of a bounce back in metals, and that could take Prakash Industries higher.
Rajat, this year the stock itself hasn't done very much. Would you advise that if somebody was to remain invested, they use a stop loss, and what might that be?
See, personally, what I would say is that it is in a downtrend right from, say, 16th of January, testing a high of 276 and already shared nearly about 100 points or so. And this is a classic lower high, lower bottom downtrend formation. So now looking at from a technical angle, if it were to fall below 165, one should actually get out. But the investor said that he is willing to even hold it for 3-4 years. In that case, I would suggest hold on with your current position, and if it were to come down to something like 145 to about 125 range, then you can add more or average it out, something like that. But it depends on him. If I were in his shoes, I would have liquidated my position, because despite this rally, my outlook on the market is pretty much negative, and I'm expecting much lower levels for the index as well as most of the stocks.
All right, got it. Up next, Rupesh Kulkarni writes to us from Nasik. He says he holds 20,000 shares of Bombay Dyeing. which he has bought at 50 rupees. He's been invested for the last 5 years. He's a long-term investor and wants to know what he should do with this. So he's making a 38 lakh rupee profit. So Rupesh, to begin with, congratulations on your investment. Sharmila, tell me you want him to take some money off, right?
Well, you know,
it's
precisely.
too painful otherwise.
Yeah. I think, you know, that's the thing, you know, because he's obviously ridden the whole up cycle that you've seen in Bombay Dyeing, and we've seen a lot of mid-caps giving this kind of return over this last year or so. But he's had it for 5 years, and you know, this stock also has not been without its worries. It has been volatile in the past. But the last couple of years have been very kind to mid-caps. The problem that happens with this kind of stock is that you don't know exactly how to value it, whether it becomes a real estate play, or what is it exactly a play on. So I think, you know, both the concerns are there in my mind. One is that he's sitting on a huge amount of profit, and secondly, how do you really value this stock? And you know, there have been land parcels, beg your pardon, which they sold, etc., which have sort of added further impetus to the stock. But I think, to my mind, I'd be far more comfortable if he at least booked partial profits at this level.
All right, book partial profits at this level. Rajat, what do you say to a man? He started out with 10 lakh rupees in Bombay Dyeing, currently holds stake worth close to 50 lakh rupees, 40 lakhs of profit. Do you think there's good for more, or maybe some money should be taken off?
I would say that you should continue to hold on with a stop below 225 for. I see a strong support around 230 odd levels, and it is unlikely to break because Bombay Dyeing generally takes support at around, say, its 200-day moving average, and it has bounced back twice from those ranges, from that moving average, and currently it has just breached the 89-day, but there is a GAN angle there around 230, which is also going to support it. So if I were to take a decision on this, then I would have held on with a stop below 225 on closing price basis. This is in earlier questions I have suggested get out. Why? Because all those investors bought at a very high level, and here is a person who has substantial profits at his disposal, so he can afford to wait, and that's why I'm suggesting a closing price stop of 225.
All right, so that's the advice. You are sitting on substantial profits. You can afford to wait. So if you can, there's a 5 rupees stop loss from the current price, rather 15 rupees stop loss from the current price, 225.
There's some update coming through on the Aadhaar case. So let's just get Ashmit in. The Supreme Court has observed that user data is commercially sensitive, can be exploited. Ashmit, what more can you tell us?
Well, what's interesting is that we have another important concession coming in from the UID CEO. Just to remind our viewers that the last hearing he had conceded that there is no institutional mechanism to check denial of benefits despite authentication. Today he's conceded that even with respect to collection and enrollment and collection of data, the enrollment that took place prior to 2016 before the coming of the Act, that was done by private entities largely without much safeguards. And this is what inspired a number of concerns that were echoed by the bench of the Apex Court. The Supreme Court observing that as of right now, it's not enough to have strong protection for UIDAI servers alone, that merely that authentication is a two-part process, and that securing one end is not sufficient, that the other end, the end where private parties are collecting data for authentication, that end is currently vulnerable, and that unless and until there is a law that is currently deployed, user data will continue to be vulnerable, and that currently, as of today, there is no law in place. Now, what's important is that the Apex Court observed that this data that is collected by private entities, that private entities collect under the Aadhaar Act, is data that can be exploited, that can be mined for commercial purposes, for commercial interests. In fact, he even cited personal, Dr. Deevan Chandrachud cited personal examples of how data can perhaps be misused or can be exploited for commercial gain. So these are questions that have been posed to the UIDAI. The hearing, we understand, is still underway. They've broken for lunch. They will resume again at 2:30 p.m. But clearly, some stern questions being raised on data security laws currently in place, and about the vulnerability of data as far as the common citizens are concerned.
All right, Ashmit. All right, thanks a lot for that. In fact, before we go on to our next query, just pull up the intraday chart of Muthoot Finance. That stock has surged. NBFCs have been doing well. Muthoot Finance has added to those gains in the last half an hour and currently sitting at the high point of today's trading session. So we'll watch out for Muthoot Finance. There you have it. But Vijay Devra writes to us from Kolkata, holds 15,000 shares of Tilak Nagar Industries at 46 rupees a piece for the last 5 years. A long-term investor wants to know whether to hold or sell. Talking about, he's from Kolkata. Let's go across to Rajat. Rajat, 15,000 shares for the last 4 years he's been holding, sitting on a huge loss. Tilak Nagar Industries, what would you recommend?
See, if he has a very long time horizon, then he can continue to hold, hoping that someday it would recover. But at the moment, there are no technical signals to suggest that it would. Point is this, that we are an emerging economy with a lot of socio-economic and socio-cultural problems, and which actually comes in the way of growth for this industry. So if you can manage all that, because there will be hiccups, there will be major downturns, and then you will make money, then fine. Otherwise, don't remain long in this industry.
Sharmila, what's your take on Tilak Nagar? I mean, the losses are huge, but at least they're narrowing. Top line still looks negative, low institutional ownership. What does one do?
I would have to sort of corroborate with what Rajat was just saying. The whole sector is sort of socio-economic issues, as he put it so nicely. So I think, yes, that's the trouble for the entire sector. And in fact, as you said, this stock doesn't have very great fundamentals to support it to start with. And I think the only time that you really saw the stock rally was when, the entire sector was rallying, and it sort of joined that rally. So unless you want to wait for that kind of a rally, I would really suggest that you start trimming your position. I think here again, the number of shares is quite large. So I think, you need to really start selling at, even starting at current levels, you slowly need to start selling off your position.
Yeah, and it still remains a very, very popular stock for some reason. Look at Tata Elxsi. The stock has seen a very sharp spike in just the last few minutes. It's up about 2% but bulk of that has come in the last few minutes. CESC, 11% higher in just the last 2 days, again sitting at the high point of trade. And Biocon is another one which has moved higher. R.S. Gupta is now on the line with us from Gujarat with a query on Vedanta. Hi sir, how can we help you?
सर जी, मैडम जी, मेरे पास में वेदांता के 150 शेयर है, मतलब वो पहले मेरे पास में क्लीन इंडिया के थे। वो वेदांता जब हुआ तो वेदांता के 150 शेयर है, उसके साथ में 150 मेरे पास में प्रेफरेंशियल शेयर कुछ अलॉटमेंट हुआ। तो वो जानना चाहता हूँ मैं, प्रेफरेंशियल शेयर क्या है ये, और वो मैं लॉन्ग टाइम तक रखूँ या क्या करूँ वेदांता को?
Okay, so Sharmila, as of now, he says that he already has about 140 odd shares in Vedanta, plus some through preferential allotment. What does he do at the moment? And if you can also explain to him the treatment of the preferential shares.
Well, actually, I'm not very clear on the treatment of preferential shares for Vedanta. Maybe one of you can help him out.
So it was basically the Ken Vedanta merger that took place. As a result of that, they got additional preferential shares as well.
Okay, so I mean, they'll be treated like normal shares. I don't think they'll be treated any differently. And if they arose from the merger, so he must have had Kane shares, and he must have got Vedanta shares in lieu of.
So he got shareholders of Kane India will receive for each share held in Vedanta, face value of 1, 4 7.5% redeemable preferential shares. So he's got 4 7.5% redeemable preferential shares.
So they're redeemable.
Yeah, they're redeemable.
Okay, so that means at some point he'll be able to redeem those shares and get some money back, and his equity shares will be his equity holding in Vedanta. And to answer that part, I think, since I'm positive on metals as a space, he should continue to hold. And with the preferential shares, when the time comes, he'll have to redeem them, and he'll get 7.5%.
Rajat, do you have a view on Vedanta? Rajat?
I would say that, if you can hear me.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that regarding the shares of Vedanta, he should put a stop loss of 270 because his cost of acquisition is much lower, and this time I would suggest that he can actually lock in that profits, and chances are that there would be a pullback rally even in the early days of April. And when that rally happens, if it fails to cross 305 to about 315, then one should exit. And regarding these preferential shares, I would say that it is currently trading at last traded price is 9.97. It can be continued, even I have that.
All right, Rajat, thank you so much for that. With that, we thank both Sharmila and Rajat. We have a wrap on